My mom stole from my daughter, so I sent her the deed to the house she'd been living in for free for 7 years. By the time she opened that box in front of 40 guests, it was already too late to pretend she didn't know what she'd done. You can picture it. White tablecloths in the garden, rented chairs lined in neat rows, a cake big enough to feed a small army, and my mother in the center of it all, smiling like she hadn't just cut her own granddaughter out of the guest list. This is what happened before I decided to mail my own mother the deed to her house as a gift. Before we even get to that party, ask yourself this. How far would someone have to push you before you finally cut them off for good? The box was plain, on purpose. No bow. No glitter. Just brown cardboard and a small white label with her name in the neat handwriting she used to teach me in 4th grade. It sat on the gift table between a basket of spa products from one of her friends and a glossy bag with tissue paper bursting out of it. She would have seen it a dozen times already, walking past with a glass of champagne, kissing cheeks, laughing that loud, bright laugh she used when she wanted people to know she was the happiest person in the world. I wasn't there. I was at home with my daughter, Lily, eating leftover pasta and watching a movie she pretended to care about for my sake. Every so often, my eyes flicked to the clock, counting down to the moment I knew my mother's fingers would slide under that strip of packing tape. I knew exactly what she would find under the flaps. The torn birthday card Lily had made for her, patched just enough that you could still see the watercolor flowers and the words, "Happy Birthday, Grandma," written in her careful 13-year-old script. The letter, printed in black ink, short and clear. No insults. No raised voice. Just dates, decisions, and the statement that as of that day, every line of support she had quietly taken from me was ending. Behind that, a 6-year ledger of numbers. Mortgage payments, taxes, insurance, repairs, allowances, prescriptions. Line after line, all signed by me. Behind that, a stack of color screenshots from a group chat called Sunday Crew. And at the very bottom, slid in flat and heavy, the deed. My mother didn't know it yet, but she had just become the legal owner of the house she'd been bragging about for years. Along with the taxes, the insurance, and the repairs she never even imagined had a price. That party was the end of the story. It really started a few weeks earlier, on a Sunday evening, with roast chicken and a seating chart. We were all at the table on Linden Street, the house my parents liked to call ours, even though the bank statements had my name on them. The dining room smelled like thyme and lemon and the faint chemical sweetness of the polish my mother used on her furniture. Lily sat beside me, elbows tucked in, careful not to bump anything. She had brought a gift bag with her, not a big one, just something she'd decorated herself with little blue hearts. Inside was a handmade card she'd spent most of Saturday on. My mother waited until halfway through the meal, right when everyone was relaxed and busy with their plates. "So," she said, spearing a green bean, "about my party next weekend." She paused, just long enough for us to look up. "You're all coming, of course. But, Clara, I need to talk to you about Lily." I felt Lily go still next to me. Her fork hovered over her plate. "What about Lily?" I asked. My mother smiled, the kind of smile she used on people she was correcting gently. "The kids' table is full," she said. "You know how it is. I've got all the little ones, Fiora's boys, Brooke's bringing that friend of hers, Lisa's twins. It's just, we ran out of space. We'll do something special with Lily another time." Across the table, Fiora let out a soft laugh. "Yeah, Mom's got her hands full with the actual grandkids," she said, eyes on her phone. "It's going to be chaos as it is." There were 4 place cards at the small folding table near the patio doors. I had set them out when I brought in the salads. 8 chairs around it. I looked at them, then back at my mother. "There are empty seats," I said. My mother sighed, like I was making things difficult over nothing. "Clara, it's not that serious. She's 13. She'll be bored out of her mind surrounded by toddlers and balloons. Let her sit this one out. It's not personal." Lily swallowed. I could hear it. "I don't mind," she said quickly. "It's fine, Grandma." "Really?" Her voice did that thing where it pretended to be cheerful and missed. My father, Elias, kept his eyes on his plate. He cut his chicken into smaller and smaller pieces, as if making more of them would somehow fill the silence. My napkin was balled in my fist under the table. I unclenched it slowly. Okay, I said. My voice sounded calm. I hated how calm it sounded. If that's what you want. My mother smiled, relieved. Good. We'll make it up to her. Maybe you and I can take her out for lunch one weekend. Just us girls. Fiora snorted. If she forgives you for this, she muttered, almost under her breath. My mother didn't correct her. After dinner, Lily disappeared into the guest room she always used when we stayed late. I stayed in the kitchen, loading dishes, listening to my mother and sister talk in the living room. They were already on to something else, the cake flavor, the floral arrangements, whether Marcella's church friends would mix well with her bridge club. Not once did I hear my daughter's name. It wasn't until we got home that I saw the card. I found it in the bathroom trash can under a layer of crumpled tissues. The watercolor flowers were smeared, the paper torn down the middle and then again into smaller pieces, as if she hadn't been sure when it was enough. I picked up the pieces one by one and fitted them together in my hands. Happy birthday, Grandma, it read, in a shaky, broken line. Lily's footsteps were soft in the hallway behind me. I messed it up, she said. Her voice cracked halfway through the sentence. It didn't matter anymore anyway. I turned. Her eyes were red, but she hadn't really cried yet. You can tell the difference when you're a parent. There's the glossy-eyed, holding it in phase, and the storm. Hey, I said. Come here. She leaned into me like a much smaller child, her forehead pressing under my chin. I held the pieces of the card behind her back so she wouldn't see them. I thought she'd want me there, Lily whispered. I thought we were family. There are some sentences that lodge in your chest and stay there, like a shard you keep swallowing around. I didn't say she was wrong. I didn't say my mother didn't mean it. I didn't make excuses. I just held her and felt something in me rearrange. For years, I'd told myself that people show love in different ways. That some families are bad at words, but good at the things that matter, showing up, helping out, sticking together. I had never questioned how much of that helping out came from me. A few days after that dinner, alone at my kitchen table with my laptop open, I finally did. I started with the house. The Linden Street address glowed on the screen, little black letters in my online banking dashboard. The mortgage had been in my name since the auction 7 years ago. I had been 29, still paying off my student loans, when I signed the papers to buy back the home my parents lost after my dad's heart problems forced him to close his contracting business. Are you sure about this? The bank officer had asked me then. I had been. I saw it as fixing something. Putting a broken thing back where it belonged. Now, I scrolled through the history. Every payment made on time. Every property tax bill covered. The homeowner's insurance premiums. The check I'd written to the roofing company when a storm took half the shingles off 3 winters ago. Then the allowance transfers. $1,400 on the first of every month, labeled with a simple note, Mom and Dad. I remembered the first conversation we'd had about it. We're just a little short until the business picks up again, my mother had said, even though the business was technically closed. Just until we're steady. 6 years later, I was steady. They were still asking. I clicked into another tab, the medical expenses. The $14,000 for my father's bypass surgery, paid directly to the hospital. The smaller recurring charges for his medication. I sat back, the chair creaking under me. I hadn't added it up yet on paper, but I could feel the weight of it. Not in dollars. In time. In trust. If it had been just the money, maybe I could have kept pretending. It wasn't just the money. My phone buzzed on the table, the screen lighting up with my mother's name. For a second, I thought she'd changed her mind about the party. That she'd realized how much that little kids' table is full had taken from Lily. I answered. Hey, I said. Clara, she said, already in the middle of her own sentence. Good, you picked up. I'm at the venue, and we've run into a little snag with the bill. I looked at the spreadsheet still open on my screen, numbers marching down the columns. What kind of snag? I asked. Well, she lowered her voice, like she was confiding in me. I could hear clinking dishes and muffled chatter in the background. They need the remaining balance for the catering. It's not much. Just $2,200. And I decided to add the balloon arch Brooke showed me, so it's a bit more, but it'll look beautiful in the photos. Okay, I said slowly. I was thinking, she continued, you could just put it on that card you used for the deposit. Quietly. We don't need to make a thing of it. And don't tell Fiora, please. She'll just feel guilty, and I don't want that on her mind. You know how sensitive she is. I stared at the wall. Let me get this straight, I said. You uninvited my daughter from your birthday party, and now you're asking me to secretly pay for the part she's not allowed to attend? Silence crackled for a second on the line. Oh, don't be dramatic, Clara, my mother said. Lily will be fine. We'll do something with her later. This is just grown-up logistics. You always understand these things. You're good with money. That last sentence landed like a verdict. You're good with money. Not you're my daughter. Not you're important to me. Not I'm sorry I hurt Lily. You're good with money. I could hear her waiting for my automatic yes. The one I always gave, because I'd convinced myself that helping them was the same as loving them, and loving them was the same as being loved back. I didn't answer right away. In the pause, I watched Lily cross the living room, socks sliding on the hardwood, earbuds in, humming under her breath. She didn't look at me. She had been doing that more since the dinner, moving around me carefully, like I was a piece of furniture she didn't want to bump into. They don't see us as family, I thought, with a clarity that made my throat hurt. They see me as a bank account with a face. I'll think about it, I said finally. My mother exhaled, half laughing. What's there to think about? You know I'll pay you back when things calm down. You know I would do the same for you if you ever needed it. We both knew that wasn't true. Yeah, I said, voice flat. I'll call you back. I hung up before she could say anything else. I sat there for a long moment, feeling the house around me, the hum of the refrigerator, the faint ticking of the clock, the muffled sound of Lily's door closing at the end of the hall. Before we go any further, tell me this in the comments. If someone cut your child out of the family and then called you for money the same day, what would you do? Be honest. __________. That night, I didn't call my mother back. I waited until Lily's bedroom door closed and the strip of light under it went dark. The house settled into that late evening quiet, refrigerator humming, occasional car passing outside, nothing else. I made a cup of tea I didn't want and sat at the kitchen table with my laptop. Most people hate looking at their bank statements. For me, it's Tuesday. I do this for a living, forensic accounting, tracing numbers that don't want to be found, building timelines from tiny digital footprints. I've helped strangers untangle affairs, embezzlements, messy divorces, business partners who skimmed from the top and hoped no one would notice. I never thought I'd have to turn that skill on my own family. I opened the portal for the Linden Street mortgage first. Years of transactions lined up in neat columns. Every payment on time. Every interest adjustment. Every escrow withdrawal for taxes and insurance. I scrolled back. 7 years. I opened a blank spreadsheet and started copying. Date. Amount. Description. My bank account as the source. The rhythm of it settled into my hands. Click, drag, paste, enter, the same way it did when I was building a report for a client. Except this time, every line on that screen had Marcella's voice attached to it in my memory. We just need a little help until things stabilize. Clara, you know I'd do it for you. You're so good with money. Property tax bills, a little over $9,000 every year. Homeowners insurance, $2,200. I pulled up the contractor invoices I'd scanned in after previous repairs. The roof, the water heater, the time a pipe burst behind the washing machine, and I'd paid a plumber extra to come out on a holiday weekend. Each one found a row. Then the allowance. I switched tabs to my personal checking account. There they were, like clockwork. First of every month, $1,400 to merit. I hovered over one of them. I could hear her in my head that first time we talked about it, voice soft, almost embarrassed. Just until we get our feet under us. 6 years of just until. I added another column and did the math. The total crept up with every paste. 20,000. 50. 80. The little sum cell at the bottom kept climbing. It didn't hit me as a lump sum, not at first. It hit as a series of images, my parents' new living room set that just sort of appeared one autumn, the cruise photos Marcella posted on social media with a caption about finally treating ourselves. Fiora's boys in matching branded sneakers, she said, were a gift from grandma. I kept going. Medical expenses next. I pulled up the health portal and cross-checked with my credit card statements. The bypass surgery bill, $14,000, paid in 2 chunks. The prescriptions for Elias's aftercare. Those went into the spreadsheet too. By the time I leaned back, my tea was cold. The little total cell at the bottom of the screen had rolled over so many times my brain had stopped trying to feel it as a single number. If I'd been preparing this for a client, this is where I'd start writing my summary. Financial exposure, duration, risk. For my own mother, the summary was simpler. I've been carrying all of it, I thought. Alone. I might have found a way to keep living with that if the next tab hadn't looked wrong. I clicked on my business account out of habit more than anything. I scan it all the time. It's part of the job to be paranoid. That night, a line of small transactions caught my eye. They were the kind of charges that feel like white noise. 50 here, 80 there, a string of grocery stores, a spa in another town, a boutique hotel name that definitely wasn't in my city. I sorted by merchant. The spa charges lined up neatly, once a month, always on a Friday afternoon. The boutique hotel showed up twice, a weekend in spring, another in early fall. There were 3 separate transactions from a big box store 2 towns over that I hadn't visited in years. I reached for my phone and pulled up my calendar. Those dates matched weeks where I'd been out of town at conferences or deep in tax season, barely leaving my office. My hand tightened on the mouse. If this had been someone else's company, I would have written it down as the suspect column. Shared card? Employee misuse? Vendor fraud? In my case, there was only one other person who ever had that card in her hand. Fiora. My sister loved to run errands for our mother. She was always popping by to drop something off, to pick something up, to borrow the card for just this one thing that couldn't wait. I checked the shipping address on one of the charges. It auto-filled to my parents' house on Linden Street. I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding and sat back, staring at the screen. I do fraud reports for a living, I thought. And I didn't see this sooner. The number at the bottom of the sheet was smaller, in comparison, 23,000 and change in random charges over 2 years, but it wasn't about the amount anymore. It was about what it meant that she'd felt comfortable doing it. I clicked out of the business account before I said something to the empty room I couldn't unsay later. There was one more thing I needed to check before I decided if this was a pattern I could shut down quietly or something that required something closer to a controlled demolition. Lily's college fund. I'd opened it the week she was born. Small automatic deposits, nothing flashy, but steady. A piece of my income each month funneled into an account that felt like a promise. The login screen felt the same as always. The balance looked about right, given the market lately. For a second, I relaxed. Then I saw the account owner's line. 2 names. Mine. And my mother's. I blinked, leaned closer. There it was, primary, Clara Merritt. Co-owner, Marcella Merritt. I scrolled down to see when that had changed. 3 years ago. There was a withdrawal line item I didn't recognize from shortly after that change, not huge, but not tiny either. Enough to catch my eye. I clicked to view the documents. The screen populated with a scanned form, a co-ownership authorization. Signature lines at the bottom. My name was there in blue digital ink. Except I had never signed this. I zoomed in. It was my name, but the shape of the letters was wrong. The loop on the C was tight instead of open. The R tilted back on itself. It looked like someone had copied my signature from memory, not muscle. The bank had accepted it. Just like that, my mother had been given legal access to the account I was building for Lily's future. Heat crawled up my neck. The kitchen felt suddenly too small. There is a particular kind of silence that comes after you realize someone has used your trust as a tool. It's different from shock. It's a kind of white noise, like static in your ears, where your brain starts flipping through every past moment looking for the point where the story changed. Not just me, I thought, staring at the withdrawal line. She didn't just steal from me. She reached into Lily's future and took a piece. The chair scraped on the floor as I stood. I walked to the sink, turned on the tap, splashed cold water on my face. The metal of the faucet was slick under my fingers. It would have been easy right then to pick up the phone and call, to demand an explanation, to scream. Instead, I dried my hands, sat back down, and opened one more account, not mine this time. Lily's phone was on the table where she'd left it earlier, plugged into the charger. The screen was dark. I wasn't trying to snoop. I just picked it up to move the cord aside so I could pull my charger through the mess on the counter. The screen lit up at my touch. A notification blinked across the top. Sunday crew. Brooke, LOL, your mom is going to flip when she sees the balloons. My stomach dipped. I knew Brooke loved group chats. I knew she and her friends had a dozen of them. But this one, the name, the timing. I shouldn't have tapped it. I did. The chat window opened. The most recent message from Brooke sat at the bottom, but my eyes skipped upward. It was like opening a door to a room I didn't know existed in a house I thought I'd built. Marcella, don't invite Lily, it will only make things awkward. She's not really one of ours, not with how Clara had her. Fiora, exactly. I'm tired of pretending. Clara always acts like she's doing us a favor when she pays for things. A friend from church I recognized by her profile picture. You're right to draw the line, Marcella. Blood is blood. You're protecting your family unit. The word family sparkled on the screen, bright against the dark background. I scrolled. They had been talking for months. Screenshots of my bank statements, cropped and shared, with captions like, should be safe to ask for roof money now and wait until after she gets her bonus. Advice from church women about how to phrase the asks so I wouldn't feel used. One message from Fiora in April, what if we just stop doing Easter baskets for Lily? It's weird. The boys don't get why she's treated like them when she's not. Marcella had replied, honestly, it keeps things simpler. We'll say we're cutting back. She'll get over it. She always does. My thumb hovered over the screen, then kept moving. A long message from my mother surfaced a few weeks before the dinner. Elias always said if we make her feel needed, she'll never walk away. He was right. She's so terrified of being alone she'll keep paying as long as she thinks we might one day actually treat her like she belongs. Don't give her that too easily. I read that 3 times. Elias always said. My father, who had sat across from me at that dinner table and cut his chicken into pieces while his wife uninvited his granddaughter from her birthday party, had understood exactly what was happening. He hadn't just gone along with it. He'd helped design the plan. I don't know how long I sat there with Lily's phone in my hand, the screen throwing cold light up into my face. At some point, I set it back down exactly where it had been, careful not to disturb the cord, like I was placing something fragile in a museum. I walked into the living room. Lily was on the sofa, legs tucked under her, a sketchbook balanced on her knees. She had one earbud in, pencil moving in short strokes over the page. A half-finished drawing of a house took shape, not ours, not my parents', something in between. The front door was open in the sketch, a tiny figure standing just inside. You're still up, I said softly. She shrugged, not looking up. Couldn't sleep. I sat in the armchair across from her, hands folded to keep them from shaking. The TV was off. The only sound was the faint scratch of her pencil. Do you like drawing houses? I asked. She squinted, added shading to the roof. I like drawing places that feel like they make sense, she said. If you draw them right, you can decide what the inside looks like. The answer hit harder than she meant it to. My entire life, I had been trying to redraw the inside of a house that someone else kept rearranging when I wasn't looking. Lily, I said, can I ask you something? She glanced up, wary. Okay. The other night, I said. When Grandma said you couldn't come to the party, did you believe her when she said it wasn't personal? She stared at the drawing, then closed the notebook slowly. I believed you when you said we're family, she said. Her voice was small, but there was steel under it I hadn't heard before. I don't think she believes it. The worst part of betrayal isn't realizing someone lied to you. It's realizing you taught yourself to accept it. I nodded. You're right, I said. The truth felt like a foreign language in my mouth. She doesn't. Lily's eyes filled, but she blinked the tears away. I don't want to be somewhere I'm extra, she said. I'd rather just be with people who actually want me there. There it was. The thing I'd spent 30 years refusing to name. Okay, I said. Then that's what we'll do. She looked at me like she was trying to figure out if I meant it. What are you going to do? She asked. I thought of the ledger. The forged signature. The messages. My father's name in that sentence of my mother's. The bones of a plan clicked into place with the same cold certainty I felt when a case I was working on shifted from maybe to absolutely. I'm going to stop pretending, I said. And I'm going to let them feel how heavy their own lives really are. She didn't fully understand what that meant yet. She would. Later that night, after she finally went to bed, I opened my laptop again. This time, I wasn't just collecting numbers, I was building a map. Every transaction was a beam. Every favor I'd done was a load-bearing wall. Every message in that chat was a crack. When you suspect fraud, the first thing they teach you is not to confront too early. Gather facts. Follow the trail. Make sure when you pull one thread, the rest of the structure comes down instead of whipping back in your face. I scrolled through the chat one more time, eyes burning. They had built a life on the assumption that I would never leave. That my fear of being alone, of being the bad daughter, would keep me tethered no matter how hard they pushed. They weren't wrong about who I'd been. They were wrong about who I was willing to keep being now that Lily was watching. This channel is for the people who did everything right, gave more than they had, and still got treated like they were disposable, I said, quietly, more to myself than anyone else. If that sounds like you, you're exactly who I'm talking to right now. ___________. Elaine's office was on the 12th floor of a glass building downtown, all clean lines and neutral colors. The kind of place where difficult conversations happened in calm voices and nobody raised an eyebrow at a woman bringing a folder thick enough to choke a paper shredder. She shook my hand firmly, the way someone does when they've decided in advance to take you seriously. Mid-40s, dark hair pulled back, no-nonsense eyes. So, she said, once we'd sat and the door clicked shut behind us. You said on the phone you wanted to stop financially supporting your parents and make sure they can't drag you through court for it. That's the short version, I said. She gestured to the folder in my lap. And the long version is in there? Most of it. I laid everything out on the table between us. The ledger first. 6 years, sorted by type. Mortgage, property tax, insurance, repairs, allowance, medical. Then the printouts from the college fund. The co-ownership form with my forged signature, the withdrawal. Then the screenshots from Sunday Crew. Elaine didn't skim. She read. Her face didn't move much, but I watched the little tells, the way her gaze went a fraction sharper at the college fund document, the way her jaw tightened at the message about Lily being not really one of us. By the time she finished, she sat back and laced her fingers together. You're sure you don't want to press criminal charges? She asked. The forged signature on the college account, the unauthorized use of your business card, that's enough to open several doors. I knew she meant doors that led to police stations and courtrooms. I'm sure, I said. If I drag them into court, it'll be 2 years of drama, and Lily will be in the middle of all of it. They'll paint me as ungrateful, vindictive. I don't need revenge that bad. What do you need? She asked. I need them out of my financial veins, I said. And I need to stop being the bad daughter in every story they tell where I finally say no. Elaine nodded slowly. You want to disengage, she said. Without giving them a clean narrative they can use against you. Exactly. She tapped her pen against the forged signature page, thinking. The house is in your name? She asked. It is, I said. I bought it at auction after the foreclosure. They've been living in it ever since. They pay me $1 a year in rent. Her eyebrows went up slightly. You're holding title, paying the carrying costs, and giving them an allowance, she said. So legally, right now, you're the landlord, the banker, and the cushion. That about sums it up. She slid a blank legal pad toward herself and started sketching boxes and arrows. What if you stopped being the landlord, she said, and they had to carry the weight of what they're standing on? I evict them? I asked. She shook her head. No, she said. That would be symmetrical. They hurt you, you throw them out. Easy story for them to tell. What I'm proposing is different. She wrote one word on the pad. Deed. You give them the house, she said. Outright. Full transfer. You sign the deed over as a gift. I stared at her. Why would I? Because ownership isn't free, she said calmly. Right now you're carrying the invisible parts of that house, the tax bills, the insurance, the emergency repairs. They enjoy the benefits. You hold the burden. If you give them title, you're not throwing them out. You're letting the legal reality catch up to the emotional one. It's theirs. All of it. I pictured Marcella's face when a property tax bill landed in her mailbox, with no one standing behind her to quietly pay it. And the rest? I asked. The allowance. The utilities. The card for the party. You're under no obligation to continue any of it, she said. We formalize a date. You notify the companies. You close the accounts or change the payment sources. You do it cleanly, in writing, with enough lead time that they can't claim you blindsided them. It'll still feel like a blindside, I said. To them, she said. To you, it'll be the first time in years that your finances reflect reality instead of obligation. She looked at the ledger again. Clara, she said quietly, what you've been doing for them would be considered a substantial support package if you were a stranger. If this were a divorce case, a judge would be asking why one party was carrying all the weight with no formal agreement. You've been doing this on handshakes and guilt. I exhaled. I know if I confront them head-on, I said, they'll turn it on me. They'll cry. They'll say I'm trying to abandon them. They'll drag Lily into it. I don't want to give them that ammunition. Then don't, Elaine said. Let the paper do the talking. She tapped the screenshots page. And keep these, she added. If they decide to drag you to court anyway and claim you cut them off out of cruelty, this is evidence that there was an ongoing pattern of exploitation. For now, you don't have to wave it around. Just know you're not crazy. This is a documented pattern. There was a line in one of those messages I kept seeing, even when I closed my eyes. She'll keep paying as long as she thinks one day we'll treat her like she belongs. Elaine pushed the legal pad toward me. On it, she'd drawn a simple set of steps. Transfer title. And recurring payments. Document everything in a formal letter. Do not engage in emotional negotiations. You're not burning the bridge, Clara, she said. You're just stepping off it and letting them feel the weight they put on you. The phrase settled over me like something I'd been waiting to hear and didn't know it. Can we start today? I asked. She smiled, small and professional. We already have. The deed transfer paperwork was thick, but the signatures were quick. We scheduled the recording for the county records office. Once that was done, there would be no going back. The house would be theirs, in every way that mattered on paper. On the drive home, my hands stayed steady on the wheel. I kept waiting for the rush, guilt, panic, vindication, something. Mostly I felt empty. Not in a bad way. More like a room after you finally move old furniture out of it. The echoes are louder, but you can breathe. The next week was a montage of quiet endings. I called the bank and canceled the automatic transfer for the $1,400 allowance. Oh, the customer service rep said, reading the notes. This has been active a long time. Too long, I said. I logged into the utility portals and removed my cards from the accounts for Linden Street. Power, water, internet. I left the accounts themselves intact. I wasn't cutting the lights. I was just no longer paying the bill when it arrived. I called the landscaping company and changed their client on file from C. Merritt to M. Merritt and updated the billing information to bill to resident. I called the catering hall. Hi, I said, when a harried-sounding woman answered. My name is Clara. I paid the deposit for Marcella Merritt's 65th birthday party. I need you to remove my card from the account. The remaining balance will need to be settled by the event organizers directly. There was a beat on the other end. Are you sure? The woman asked. She said you were handling it. I'm sure, I said. Each call, each click, each signature was like unclipping a hook from my skin. Not triumphant. Not vengeful. Just done. At night, after Lily went to bed, I sat at the table with a stack of blank printer paper and the humming of the fridge for company and started assembling the one thing that would say everything I wasn't going to say out loud. The box had arrived from an online retailer that afternoon, plain brown cardboard, big enough to hold a stack of documents without folding them. I started with the card. I'd kept the pieces of Lily's birthday card in an envelope on my dresser. The torn edges were soft now from handling. I laid them out on the table and fitted them together like a jigsaw, taping the back so they held. It wasn't perfect. A couple of watercolor petals were missing. The G in Grandma was jagged where it had ripped across. It was exactly how it should look. I placed the card flat at the bottom of the box, then changed my mind and lifted it out. No, it should be the first thing she saw. I put it on top. Next came the letter. I didn't let myself write when I was angry. Anger tempts you to say things you can't unsay. I waited until the house was quiet in my head. Mom and Dad, I typed. I am writing to let you know that, as of the 1st of next month, I will no longer be financially supporting the household on Linden Street. I laid it out like a report. I have covered the following expenses over the past 6 years. Mortgage payments, property taxes, homeowner's insurance, maintenance and repairs, a monthly allowance, medical expenses for Dad's heart surgery and prescriptions. I will not be continuing to cover these moving forward. The deed to the house is enclosed. From this point, all responsibilities and liabilities associated with the property belong to you as the legal owners. This is not a decision made lightly. It is a decision made to protect my daughter and myself. Clara. No accusations. No mention of the chat. No mention of Lily being not really family. The facts were heavy enough. I printed the letter, signed it, and set it under the card. Then the ledger. I printed each year on separate packets, stapled them neatly. Each packet had a cover page, year 1, year 2, up through year 6, with the annual total at the bottom. I stacked them in chronological order. Then the screenshots. I didn't include all of them. That would have been overkill. I picked the ones that told the story in as few images as possible. Marcella's "she's not really one of ours" message. Fiora suggesting they stop doing Easter baskets for Lily. The church friend telling my mother she was protecting her family unit. The financial planning ones, where they discussed when to ask me for money. The line about Elias always saying I'd never walk away as long as I felt needed. I printed them large so nobody would have to squint. Finally, at the bottom, I placed the deed. It was still crisp from the recording office. Black ink on white paper, legal language winding down the page. At the bottom, my signature, this time in my own hand, granting the property at 14, Linden Street to Elias and Marcella Merritt as joint owners. I flattened it gently, smoothing the edges. Then I closed the box. I taped it shut, wrote my mother's name and the address of the garden venue on the top, and drove it to the overnight shipping office. The clerk slapped on a barcode sticker, typed in the address, and told me it would arrive by 10 a.m. Big party? She asked, making small talk. Something like that, I said. The morning of the party, the weather was perfect. Blue sky, light breeze, the kind of day people post photos of with captions about feeling blessed. I knew because my sister posted one on her story, a boomerang of the balloon arch going up, pastel colors bobbing in the sunshine. Lily and I sat on the couch in our pajamas, a bowl of popcorn between us even though it was barely noon, watching a movie she'd picked about a girl who finds out she's royalty. Every so often, my phone buzzed with a notification. I turned it face down. Somewhere across town, 40 people were arriving at a garden filled with round tables, a carefully iced cake, and a gift table anchored by a plain brown box. I could see it in my mind as clearly as if I were there. The guests milling around, setting down their presents. The caterers refilling trays. Marcella moving from circle to circle, cheeks already a little flushed from attention. At some point, someone would gesture toward the gift table. Open some of them now, a friend would say. We want to see what you got. She'd demur at first, later, after we eat, but they'd press. She loved an audience. She'd give in. They'd hand her the glossy bags, the wrapped boxes. Scarves. Candles. A framed picture of her and Elias from some vacation. Then somebody's hand would land on cardboard. What's this one? They'd say. Her name, in my handwriting, on top. She'll keep paying as long as she thinks one day we'll treat her like she belongs. I wondered if she'd hear that line echo in her head as she slid her nails under the tape. I wasn't there to see her lift the flaps, but I'd imagined it so many times it felt like a memory anyway. Card first. She would recognize Lily's handwriting immediately. She'd seen it on dozens of cards over the years. The torn lines. The taped back. The watercolor flowers. The words, "Happy birthday, Grandma," barely held together. Her smile would slip, just a fraction. Next, the letter. Her own name at the top. Mine at the bottom. In between, sentences she'd skim, then reread slower the second time when the meaning sank in. As of the 1st of next month, I will no longer be financially supporting. She'd flip the page, looking for the catch. The apology. The part where I said it was temporary. There wouldn't be one. Then the ledger packets. She'd riffle through them, confusion furrowing her brow as she realized what she was holding: every quiet rescue, every invisible payment, every time I'd stepped in without mentioning it, all lined up in black and white. I pictured her turning to Elias then. "Did you know all this?" she'd ask. He'd look down at the pages, see his surgery, his medications, the mortgage, the taxes. I hoped, in that moment, he'd feel the weight of his own silence. Then the screenshots. Faces around her would lean in as the colors caught their eyes. They'd see her words on the page, preserved in pixels. "Not really one of ours. Blood is blood. She'll keep paying as long as she thinks one day we'll treat her like she belongs." There are some things you can explain away in private. It's harder when your own handwriting is staring back at you in front of a crowd. Someone's aunt would make a small sound under her breath. Someone from church would look from the screen to Marcella's face and back again. And then, at the bottom of the box, the deed. I imagined her turning it over, searching for the trap. "What is this?" she'd ask. "It's the title to your house," someone would say. "It's in your name now." She'd see my signature. She'd see the county stamp. She'd piece it together slowly. I wasn't evicting her. I was stepping away. I didn't need to see her expression when the caterer walked up. I could hear the tone. "Mrs. Merritt?" Polite. A little strained. "I'm so sorry to interrupt. I just need to talk to you about the remaining balance on the event." "The what?" she'd say, dazed. "The remaining $2,200, the caterer would repeat. "We tried to run the card on file, but it's been removed. We'll need another form of payment today." Eyes would shift toward Fiora. "I thought Clara was handling it," my mother would say, too loudly. Fiora would flush. "I don't have that kind of money on me," she'd snap. "You told me you and Clara had it covered." An aunt, the one who always tried to smooth things over at holidays, would end up fishing out her own card just to stop the scene from turning into a full-blown argument in front of the buffet table. But the damage would already be done. They'd have seen the card, the letter, the ledger, the screenshots, the deed, and now the bill. They'd seen the shape of the story. And for once, I hadn't written their roles for them. Back on my couch, Lily laughed at something on the screen. I watched the side of her face, the way her eyes crinkled when she really laughed. If you've ever been in a room where people are quietly circling one person with their words, you know the energy of a collapse when the target steps aside. With the ledger and the screens exposed, there was nowhere for the pressure to go but sideways. Fiora would turn on Marcella. "How could you write that about Lily?" she'd demand. "What kind of grandmother says that?" Marcella would whip back, wounded pride flaring. "Oh, don't act innocent," she'd say. "You were all too happy to let her pay for everything. You're the one who kept saying we should ask for more." Elias, who had been quiet for most of his life, would finally have to pick a side in public. I pictured him looking at the pages in his hands, then at his wife, at his daughters, at the people they'd invited to admire their life. "What did you do to our daughter?" he'd ask. Not, "What did she do to you?" "What did you do to her?" That question, out loud, would shift the air in the tent more than any yelling could. There would be a scramble, explanations, excuses, tears. Someone would try to blame me for the timing. "She could have talked to us," Marcella would say, voice cracking on command. "She didn't have to humiliate us like this." But humiliation can only stick if you didn't earn the exposure. The people at that party had one version of what happened. Now you've seen mine. In the comments, tell me your verdict, guilty or justified, and tell me which person you're talking about. _________. The first bill hit in January, right on schedule. I didn't see it land in their mailbox, but I saw the scanned copy later when the county's automatic notification email pinged my inbox to let me know there'd been an address change on a property I used to own. I'd already transferred everything to Marcella and Elias, but the system still thought I should be kept in the loop. 9,000 and some change. Due in 30 days. Property tax notices are written in neutral language, but there's always a quiet threat under the numbers. I pictured my mother at the kitchen table, the same table I'd grown up at, holding that envelope with the county seal. Her manicured nails running along the edge of the paper. Elias sitting opposite her, glasses perched low, reading the lines twice. For years, those bills had existed somewhere just beyond her field of vision. She'd known, in theory, that taxes were paid, but not when, or how much, or by whom. Now her name was on the line that said owner. A month later, in February, the furnace gave out. It was an old unit. I'd had it serviced more times than I could count. The last contractor had warned me we'd be lucky to get another winter out of it. This time, when it died, there was no card on file for them to quietly run. I didn't have to imagine that one. I heard about it. The call came on a Sunday afternoon. I was in the middle of chopping vegetables for a soup Lily wanted to try, the kind with too much garlic and not enough carrots. My phone lit up on the counter. Mom flashed on the screen. For a second, I almost didn't answer. Then I did. Hello. Clara, she said. Her voice was softer than usual, like she'd swallowed something sharp. I hope I'm not catching you at a bad time. There was a time I would have said, automatically, it's never a bad time. I didn't do that anymore. I'm in the middle of something, I said. What's going on? She laughed, thin and strained. Well, she said, we seem to have had a bit of a disaster here. The furnace went out last night. We woke up, and you could see your breath in the kitchen. Your father's joints are killing him. I called the company you used before, but they said they couldn't schedule anything until they had a card on file and... She trailed off expectantly. I could hear the subtext as clearly as the words. That tone that said, you know what to do. So call and give them your card, I said. Silence crackled down the line. Clara, she said finally, this isn't funny. You know we can't handle a bill like that right now. I do know, I said. I've known for years. That's why I paid for it the last time. And the time before that. She exhaled, an irritated little huff that she tried to disguise as a sigh. We're your parents, she said. We've done so much for you. The least you can do is help us when we're in a bind. I looked around my kitchen. The soup ingredients. The drawings on the fridge. Lily's sneakers kicked off by the door. The ledger flashed in my mind. 6 years of help. This isn't a bind, Mom, I said quietly. A bind is an emergency. This is the ongoing cost of a life you've chosen not to pay for. That's a cruel thing to say, she snapped. It's a factual thing to say, I replied. She shifted tactics immediately. I know you're upset about the party, she said. I shouldn't have. I didn't think it through. I'm sorry if Lily's feelings were hurt. But punishing us like this? Over one misunderstanding? That's not like you. There it was. Half apology, half accusation. You didn't just forget to put her name on the list, I said. You told her the kids' table was full. You told her, in your group chat, that she's not really one of ours. You talked about my bank accounts with your friends and strategized how much you could get from me before I noticed. Her breath hitched. You went through my phone, she demanded. You went through my bank accounts, I said. You forged my name on Lily's college fund. I think we're well past debating who crossed the line first. She went quiet. When she spoke again, her voice was small, almost pleading. Can we just start over? She asked. You transfer things back the way they were. We forget about the party. I'll make more of an effort with Lily. We're family. We're supposed to work things out, not freeze each other out. I felt a familiar ache in my chest, the one that used to make me say yes before my brain caught up. I stopped trying to buy a place in a family that never planned to give me one, I said, more to myself than to her. That's all this is. Clara, she said sharply, your father could get sick in this cold. Do you want that on your conscience? I closed my eyes. No, I said. I don't. That's why his prescriptions are paid up through the end of the month, and why I paid for the surgery when he needed it. But I'm not financing the rest of your life anymore. So you're just going to let us freeze? She spat. No, I said. I'm going to let you call the same companies I've been calling for years and make arrangements like every other adult. You've had a safety net so long you forgot it was there. I'm just stepping out from under it. You'll regret this, she said, her voice shaking with fury now. You always overreact. You always. I ended the call. My hand trembled a little as I set the phone down, but it steadied as soon as I picked up the knife again. Everything okay? Lily called from the living room. Yeah, I said. Just turned down a bad deal. January and February passed with a strange lightness, even with the heaviness of what I'd done. Grief came in waves, but it was clean. It wasn't tangled up with obligation anymore. I missed the mother I thought I had. I missed the idea of a father who would have hit the brakes on this long before it reached my daughter. The people they really were? I was still learning how to see them clearly. The next shift came from a direction I didn't expect. A message popped up one evening while I was finishing a report, an unknown number, but the name attached to it made me sit up. Brooke. Hey, Aunt Clara. Can I talk to you? Like, not in front of my mom. I stared at the screen for a second, then typed back. Of course. What's up? She took a minute to reply, as if she was writing and deleting and writing again. I saw the chat she finally sent. The one with my mom and grandma and their church friends. I saw what they said about you. And about Lily. I swallowed. How much did you see? I asked. Enough, she wrote. I thought it was just complaining before. You know how they are. But the stuff about not really family and the money and grandpa. I didn't know it was like that. I feel sick. I pictured her in her bedroom, phone glowing in the dark, the same way I'd sat with Lily's phone weeks before. I'm sorry you had to see that, I wrote. None of that is on you. I'm not like them. She sent that quickly, the bubbles appearing and disappearing in a rush. I mean, I'm their kid, but I'm not. I don't think like that. I like Lily. I like you. I miss Sunday mornings when you used to bring donuts. A tiny, unexpected warmth moved through me. Lily misses you too, I said. You don't have to pick sides, you know. You get to decide who you have relationships with. Even if it doesn't line up with what your mom wants. Mom says you're trying to tear the family apart, Brooke typed. I could almost hear Marcella's phrasing in that sentence. I'm trying to stop being the only thing holding it together, I wrote. There's a difference. After a long pause, another message arrived. Can I still see you? And Lily? Like, just us. The question hurt because it shouldn't have had to be asked. Yes, I replied. Anytime your schedule and conscience allow. We started with breakfast. Saturday morning, 9 a.m., at a little diner 5 minutes from my place that did pancakes the size of your head and had a waitress who called everyone sweetheart. The first week, Brooke showed up alone, shoulders hunched, hands wrapped around her phone like a lifeline. The second week, Lily dragged a sketchbook along and slid it across the table. I need a new character, she told Brooke, trying to sound casual. Do you want to be a space pilot or a detective? Brooke laughed, the tension in her shoulders easing. Detective, she said. But like a cool one. Not trench coat and cigar. More, headphones and hoodies, solving stuff on her laptop. Sold, Lily said, pencil already moving. We didn't talk about Marcella or Fiora much in those breakfasts. Not directly. But the fact that we were there, together, without them, said enough. It was proof that whatever story the older generation tried to tell, the next one didn't have to repeat it. The last piece of the fallout arrived one Saturday in March. There was a knock on my door at 7:15 in the morning. Not the frantic pounding of an emergency, just a steady, uncertain rhythm. I checked the peephole and had to check it again. Elias stood on the porch, hands full. He had 2 paper cups of coffee in a cardboard holder and a small white bag from the ice cream shop on Miller Street, the one that did take-home pints and little containers of toppings. He looked older than the last time I'd seen him up close. The lines around his mouth were deeper, his hair thinner. He shifted his weight from one foot to the other like a man who wasn't sure he was allowed to be there. For a second, I thought about not opening the door. Then I caught, out of the corner of my eye, movement on the stairs. Lily, hair messy, in an oversized t-shirt, had stopped halfway down. She must have heard the knock and come to see who it was. She saw him. Grandpa, she said, voice small. His head snapped toward the sound. He couldn't see her through the door, but he must have heard the word. His shoulders dropped a fraction, like he'd been bracing for something and hadn't realized it. I opened the door. "Hi," I said. "Hi," he echoed. For a moment, we just stood there, the cold morning air sliding between us. "I brought coffee," he said finally, lifting the holder a little. "They messed up and gave me an extra, and I thought." He trailed off, swallowed. "And I brought Lily something," he added, holding up the bag. "They're doing these little Sunday kits now. I know it's too early for ice cream, but I figured it might." I don't know. I didn't really think it through. It was the most unpolished I'd heard him in years. "You could have called," I said. "I know," he replied. "But I didn't want to give you room to say no before I could say what I came to say." The honesty of that disarmed me more than any apology could have. "What did you come to say?" I asked. He looked down at his hands, then up at me. "I knew," he said. "No preamble. No hedging. About the money. About your mother asking. About how much you were doing. I told myself it was between you and her. I told myself I didn't want to meddle. But the truth is, I liked the way things were. Warm house. No bills I couldn't pay. I pretended not to see how lopsided it was because it benefited me." He took a breath, like this hurt to admit. "I didn't know about the college fund," he continued. "Or that they said those things about Lily. When I saw those pages at the party, with my name next to those comments." He trailed off. "I'm not asking you to forgive me," he said. "I don't deserve that. I don't want the last chapter of my life to be sitting in that house with your mother, pretending we didn't break something. I'd like a chance to show up differently. For Lily. If she'll let me." Behind me, I heard the soft scuff of socks on the stairs. "Mom?" Lily called. "Closer now. Is that really?" She rounded the corner and stopped in the doorway, bare feet on the hardwood, eyes wide. "Grandpa," she said again, like she was testing the word. He turned toward her, eyes already glossy. "Hey, kiddo," he said. "I brought you ice cream at the most inappropriate time of day." A small, startled laugh escaped her. "That tracks," she said. She looked up at me, question written all over her face. It would have been easy to slam the door. To tell him he was 20 years too late. To protect the boundary with barbed wire. It would have been just as easy to let him in and pretend everything was fine, to sweep the past under a rug that already had too many lumps. I wasn't interested in either of those extremes. "Here are the rules," I said, more to myself than to him. "You see her here. On my terms. My schedule. You do not bring Grandma. You do not bring the drama. You don't talk to her about what happened unless she asks, and when she does, you tell her the truth. Not the story Mom is telling." He nodded, quick and earnest. "Whatever you say," he said. "You make the rules. I follow them. I mean that." I nodded toward the living room. "Take your shoes off," I said. "Coffee stays in the kitchen. Ice cream doesn't hit the table until after 9. He smiled then, small and shaky. "Deal," he said. Lily stepped aside to let him in. As he passed her, he reached out, hesitated, then rested his hand lightly on her shoulder. She didn't pull away. Some people think forgiveness is this big, cinematic moment where the music swells and everything is healed. For me, it was letting my father take off his shoes in my hallway and sit awkwardly on my couch while my daughter showed him her drawings, knowing full well he'd been part of the problem and choosing to let him try to be part of a different solution. Walking away didn't make me cruel. It made me honest. Honest about what I was willing to tolerate, honest about what my daughter deserved, honest about the fact that calling something family doesn't turn it into a safe place by magic. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do for a child is show them how to close a door that should have been closed a long time ago and still leave a window open for the people who are willing to climb back in the hard way. If you watched this far, you didn't do it just for entertainment. You watched it because some part of this story already knows your name. Maybe you're the one everyone leans on until you bend. Maybe you're the one who's been told you're overreacting every time you try to set a boundary. Maybe you're the quiet one who has a ledger in your head of every time you said yes when you wanted to say no. Whatever you're carrying, you're further along than you think. You already know something is wrong. You already know the way it's been can't be the way it keeps being, not if you want the next generation to grow up in a different story. Save this video and come back to it on the days you feel like you're the problem for finally saying enough. You're not. You're the one who stepped off the bridge and let the people who built it feel its weight for the first time.